Good morning, everyone. I'm Elio Struyf, and today I'm going to talk about display templates, as the name suggests. So farewell XSL, welcome display templates. First of all, this slide is the most important one in my deck, and in everyone's deck, the sponsors. I would like to thank them all, because without these sponsors, this event wouldn't be true. So, small thing about me. Who am I? I'm Elio Struyf, a SharePoint consultant from Belgium, working for Xylos, Belgian company. I also have a colleague here, Thomas Vochte. He will talk about ADFS in the afternoon, so nothing to do with mine. I'm also a BWIC board member. BWIC is a Belgian SharePoint community. So we also organize a SharePoint Saturday, so that's why I know that sponsors are very important for the community. I started SharePoint back in 2007 as a system administrator, and then did some functional things, but that was not my thing. That was just a way to learn SharePoint. And then I went to my real passion, and that's web design and developing. So then I became a SharePoint brander and / development, mainly branding, but if I have time, I do some development parts. I have a Twitter handler. It's on this slide. Also a blog, and you can contact me via various ways, Twitter, blog, or email. So I prepared an agenda for you today. So first of all, we are going to talk a little bit about what we had in the past, 2007, 2010, and what do we have now available. Then we move over to what display templates really are, what to do before you can use them. Then we dive into the demos and creating our own display templates. How can you debug them and how to provision them. First of all, who worked with SharePoint 2007? Okay, 2010. Perfect. So the past first. So I prepared a scenario where I wanted to show the latest documents of my site. I think that's probably the most used things on a document site, on an intranet site, showing the latest documents of that site. So what we had to do, we had a page, we placed a content query web part around it, and we configured it, and it gave us the results it needed. With what was this HTML visualized? That was done via XSL. Anyone that didn't work with XSL? Okay. Anyone that liked working with XSL? Come on. So you didn't like working with XSL. Damn. I thought I was going to see some hands because I liked it a bit. A bit. It depends, yeah. It did what it had to do, but it wasn't that flexible. You needed to do, if you created your HTML, then you still had to do some things with JavaScript or something. So let's move over to our second scenario, showing the latest documents of various site collections. What options did we have there? Content query web parts, is that an option? Yes? Who says yes? Who says no? Raise your hand for no. Who says yes? No, you didn't have that option. It says only showing the items from the current site collection, from the current site, or from the current library. You couldn't use it for various site collections. You could use it on a site collection, but you couldn't specify which site collections you wanted to retrieve your data from. Another option was custom development, but I'm not going to do development in this. So the real option you had out of the box available was a search core result web part. Did anyone use this for not in a search center, but on his pages to give some results. The visualization of your HTML was also done via XSL, but the XSL in that web part was a bit harder to maintain and change and so on, because the templates weren't that clean as in a content query web part, and the code jumped around a lot of times. So it was a hard time to maintain these templates. So let's move to the present then. So what things do we have now? We have two new web parts, or one new web part and one updated web part, the content search web part and the search result web part. The two web parts are quite the same, but they only use different templates, and you have more configuration possibilities in the content search web part than you have in the search result web part for creating roll-ups and such kind of things. The good thing about these two web parts is that they have no site collection limitation, so can be used for all your site collections and so on. And these web parts also use HTML and JavaScript, so that's a good thing. No more XSL. Most important thing on this slide, content search web part is only available in an enterprise license, so you need to activate the enterprise features on that site. If you forget it, no problem. You will quickly see. I had it at another client. I came in and they told me, yes, you need to create some slider web parts or slider styles for our site, and it may be done in display templates. Okay, fine, good. We set it up, and everything was running on our test platform from the client. The only thing that was different between the test and the production was that test was enterprise and production was standard. So we had a problem there. So I moved everything from a display template for the content search web part to a search result web part. So it works, but you need to do some things. A small comparison. So first of all, content query and content search. Content query has a site collection limitation, content search hasn't. The visualization is done for the content search via XSLT and for the other one with display templates. The good thing about content query web part, it's still available, and if you want to return your results immediately, then that's the web part to use. The content search web part, you're always in need to first crawl your data before it can be visualized. So that's the only thing. The good thing in SharePoint 2013, you have continuous crawl, so it's almost instant depending on the delay you have between your crawlings. Content query web part is server-side rendering, so that's a good thing for your client. And content search is client-side rendering, so that's a good thing for the performance of your server. So then we come to the next point. Content query is client performance, very good, or better than content search web part. Because if you are using a lot of content search web parts on your page, it can slow down your page. So be aware that you don't use too much content search web parts on one page. And the content search web part is only showing you the major versions of the file because it's crawled, and that account only has permissions for that major version, and the content query can show the minor versions if you have permissions to it. That's a good thing and a bad thing. I came from a platform at another client, and they had a lot of remarks about the content query that they saw already documents that may not be visualized yet because it was a minor version, but because that user had permissions and the person before me didn't set it up to show only the published documents, it showed the minor. So that problem is already solved in the content search web part. So let's move back to our second scenario then. So if we place that scenario from before in the context of SharePoint 2013, so again you have your site collections with your libraries on it, and then you have your search application. Your search application crawls all the documents and stores it in its own application and databases and so on. Then you place a content search web part on your page, you configure it, and you have your latest documents. So simple as that. And for that, there is a query builder. I'm going to show you a little demo. Don't know if Paul has showed this in his previous session. So the query builder is a wizard-like interface for building your own queries. If you had the content query web part, there's a problem with my screen here. Now I get the scroll bar. In the content query web part, if you configured your filters, then you didn't see the results directly. You needed to save or store the properties, then save the page, refresh the page, and then you saw which results you were retrieving. Sometimes that was a bit hard because you did something wrong or you set a wrong value and then you needed to open the page again, open the edit web part properties and so on. So it was some trial and error. Now, with the content search and the search results web part, you have the query builder. And this query builder already shows at the right side which results you retrieve. So you have a simple view and or a quick view and an advanced view. On the quick view, you have some queries predefined. So let's retrieve only the pages from the current site, or let's retrieve only documents. There aren't any documents on it. Pictures. So you can quickly change some things. If you're moving to the advanced view, then you can see that you retrieve the query that was behind the predefined query from the quick mode. And you can create your own queries. So you can add your own properties. And what I'm going to do, I prepared some pages for you and with a specified content type. So we are going to place content type equals and then a manual value Xylos news. And then you can quickly test that if it returns data. So I get 4 pages, that's correct. I only have 4 pages on that site. You can refine the results like in a search center. You can sort your results. So I have a date. And if it's okay, so you can quickly do some things and you can test your. And if you're happy with that, if the results are correct, you can store that. And you have your other results. So to visualize these results in the web part, display templates are used. So what are display templates really? A display template defines the visual layout of your search results. So it's created with the help of HTML and JavaScript, so no more XSLT. So it's a little bit easier to understand and quicker to adapt. It exists of 2 files, an HTML file and a JavaScript file. In some scenarios it can only exist in a JavaScript file, but that is because the HTML file isn't provisioned to that site. The HTML file is there for you, and you can modify, alter everything in that file. From the moment that file gets saved, then a JavaScript file will be created. And that JavaScript file will be used from in SharePoint. So SharePoint uses the JavaScript file. You as a developer, IT pro, power user, or whatever, you can use the HTML file and make your changes in that file. As I said, it's client-side rendering, so be aware, don't do too much things in it because it can, the performance on your clients can be going down. What does a display template really do? So it uses search, and in search you have your managed properties, and a display template is going to retrieve these managed properties from search, and it's going to use these managed properties in the display template to visualize it. So here is an example from a normal search result web part. So this file extension is used for the icon here, title and path for the title and the link behind it, a document summary for the document description, and then path just for the path of the document. Really neat thing in 2013. Don't know if you ever done it. If you click on that path, it will render a text box with the path already highlighted, so you can copy paste and you have your full URL to your document. So now it has some purpose that it's down there. Then we come to the logical structure of a content search web part. So this gives you a better overview of what these display templates really do. So you have a web part, and in that web part you specify which query for the results that you want to retrieve and which templates you are going to use for these results. So here, for example, we see a list with paging, and we see an item template. This list with paging, that green lined thing, is the control template, and the control template defines the overall layout of your blocks. So it can be a list, it can be a list with paging, or it can be a slideshow out of the box. But if you want, it can also be something else if you create your own control templates from it. So it can be that you want a table-like layout, then you're going to define a table in your control template. And in your item template, you're going to define the cells for that table. So an item template is going to define the layout of the item itself. So the item template is going to retrieve the managed properties from search, and it's going to visualize it there. And the control template is going to be only loaded once in the web part, and it's going to call that item template for each result it retrieves. Here you see out-of-the-box search center. Can anyone tell me where display templates are used in that search center? Everywhere, okay. So refiners, how many do you think that are used? In the backend there are more than, but you have one control template, and that's the overall, that's a vertical one. You only have one, a vertical. You can create your own and let it be a horizontal, that's no problem. And then for each of these refiners, you have a refiner template or a refiner display template. The result block itself is a display template. Behind the scenes there is a grouping display template. And then for each result you have an item display template. Then you have another panel display template. So indeed it's almost used everywhere. Is there another one, or is that all? Yeah? I placed it with dotted lines because a search box out of the box isn't rendered from a display template. The search box comes rendered from the assembly, and the HTML rendered from that assembly. But there's if you want to replace the search box by your own branding, you can define a property serve initial render and set it to false, and then you can define your own display template for the search box. So it's easier to modify your search box. What do we need to do before we can start using these display templates? First of all, we need to have content, because without content you don't retrieve results. Then you're going to crawl your content, and you're going to define your own managed properties, or you can use the auto-created one that SharePoint 2013 creates. That's a little bit more about it on the next slide. And depending on what you have chosen, or if you've chosen to define your own managed properties, then you will need to do a full crawl again. If you're using the auto-created one, then you don't need to do anything. So the auto-created one, that's a little bit about that. So the supported fields in a content query web part, that's something I received a lot from a client because they were working with content query web parts. And yeah, there you had to manage metadata, and it couldn't be visualized and such kind of things. And lookup fields, you had these prefixes with the ID, pound tag, and so on. And he asked me, is it possible to use managed metadata? Is it possible to use lookup fields easier? And the answer is yes. Each field that can be indexed in your search can be used. There are some things about that. For instance, there's an auto creation process, and from the moment your crawling is being done, it's going to crawl all these columns, and for a new column it creates a new managed property. Only for a lookup field, it's not going to create it automatically. You need to create it manually. So that's something important. I saw I didn't retrieve the results, and the article of TechNet is at the bottom, and there you can see which fields are automatically created and which aren't. So, and for the managed metadata field, it's my best use is to use the auto created property, and don't use your or don't define your own properties, because if you define it, sometimes or most of the times you retrieve the GOAT instead of the value itself. So if you're using the auto created one, then you retrieve the value. Then we can move to the creation process. So we have created our content, we have crawled our content, we have our properties available in search, so we can define our own display templates. So creating them, there are a couple of things to do. The most easiest thing is to work is if you map your master page gallery. That isn't a requirement, you don't need to do that. But if it's your only site where you're modifying your display templates, it's easier to map it. The out-of-the-box location is under the master page gallery / display templates, and there you will find a couple of folders. We will see it in the demo, and these folders are groupings for your display templates. The SharePoint or Microsoft made it easier for you to see which display template is for which web part. So you're going to find the search folder, so you know that these display templates are only for your search result web part. You're going to find a content control web part, content control display template, so you know that it's for your content search web part and some other things. And best is to start from an existing template. If you don't, it's not a requirement, but if you don't, then you are going to create or manually create a lot of content in your files. So it's best to start from an existing one, clean it up, what you don't need, and start altering it. And a good thing is you don't need to use SharePoint Designer anymore. If you liked it and you're still liking it, you can use it. So, but right now you can use an editor of your choice. This is what we are going to create. So I created some pages. I added a roll-up image to that page. I added an abstract of that page, and I'm going to visualize it in a slider. So we have a control template that is going to define the next and the previous and the next navigation, and the item templates is going to define the image, the title, and the link behind it, and the abstract. So first of all, the control template. So the control template is for the next and the previous, and is going to call the item template. Can anyone read this? So this is a master page gallery. I'm going to map it, or is it still open? Yes, it's still open. Okay, thanks. There you have a display templates folder, and in that display templates you will find a couple of folders. So content, web art, filters. So filters is for refinement panel, the search and system, that's some things. But what I need is a default control template, and I'm going to use the control list template. Where you're going to place your own file doesn't matter. So you don't need to place your files in that folder. What I always do is I go back to the master page gallery. There I place a project folder. Now it's called SPS Stockholm. And in that folder I place a display templates folder, and I paste my file in it. So I just copied the HTML file, and it automatically creates the JavaScript file. So because that's the easiest thing I find, because then all the templates of your clients are in the exact location and not in the locations of the default SharePoint templates. The search result web part, or the content search web part, is just going to take a look at which templates there are based on the content type, and it retrieves that. So it's just going to query. You don't need to do anything else. I'm going to give the control template a new name. You can leave the prefix of control before it. It's always easy to know which type of template it is. And I'm going to call it STS Stockholm. Okay. So a control template looks like this. The only not good thing about it is it's HTML. That's a good thing. But the JavaScript is in common, so you don't have syntax highlighting in JavaScript. So that's the only problem. So if you're writing a lot of code, you can best do it in a separated file and use it. But I'll show you directly. The first thing to do in a control, or in every display template, is to change the title of that control. So SPS control. And then we have some properties. These properties define what type of template it is. So we have a content type, a target control type, and these things are used in the web parts to know, oh, that is a display template that I can use, and it's a control type. These properties may not be removed. If you remove these things, then you need to manually set them in SharePoint. If you leave them here, then SharePoint is going to retrieve that data, and it's going to map them to the corresponding metadata of that content type. Then we have some cleaning up to do. You don't need to do that. I always do it because I don't like all the comments. But the comments are quite useful because it says where you need to place your HTML. So the first comment says that you need to place your HTML in this div element. If you place it before it, then it won't be taken into account and it just be left out and your JavaScript display template will be invalid. So let's remove this. It also says another thing, but that's for the item templates I'm going to talk about. Then you have some no result clauses and retrieving a message when no results are displayed. We don't need that in this example. Removing the no results content. And at the bottom, this is a default unordered list. So this is what we are going to change. So the first thing to do is we don't need the unordered list anymore. We're going to change it with our slider. And the content looks like this. So we have a div element, so that's a container around it. And in the container there is a left and a right navigation slider. And then you have a container for all your slides in it. This render groups is going to call in behind the scenes the list render wrapper. And this list render wrapper is going to call the item templates each time for each item. So what you see here is a list item that it pushes a list item element. We don't need this anymore. And if it wants to move. Okay. Another very useful thing is they always place an include language script that's with a custom string in it. That's to define your own language files for JavaScript. I always remove it because it isn't needed. But if you want to create some variables, some language-specific content, then you can create your own JavaScript for it, and you can reference it here. Another thing you can do is reference some CSS for the display template. And that can be done via the include CSS method. So you define your current URL. You can define a site collection token, can also be site or something. And then you define the exact location to your CSS file. What you can also do is you can include a script. So for my slider, I'm using a jQuery plugin called Cycle. And I'm going to reference it here. So I'm going to include a script. And just as the same way as you do it for the CSS file, you can do it for your JavaScript file. So this is our first template. It's not ready yet, but it's a first thing. So if we go back to our slide on the page, we are going to define our own control template for the web part. Again, something. And now you see control, and you have an SPS Stockholm control template available. So because we created a control template and defined it as a control template, it can be used in that web part. If you change it, you immediately see the results of that template. So that's what we need right now. So it's not rendering. Oh, did it not save it correctly? Oh no, because I just clicked on save and not on the OK button. So back, edit web part. Stockholm. Okay. So this is how it looked like. So our item template doesn't exist right now, so that's something we need to create, but you have your control template available. You can't click on it yet because there aren't actions defined. That's something we are going to do later on. So going back to our slides, giving a small recap. So what's important, you can include your own CSS file via the include CSS method. You can include JavaScript files via the include script method. You can also include language files via the include language script, but that's what I mostly don't use. I use other methods for it. Writing your own HTML markup, it's important that you write it in the first div element you'll find in your body tag. Before it wouldn't be taken into account, so write it in the first div. Next thing is to create your own display, your item display template. So the item display template is going to retrieve the image of the page, the title, the path, and so on. So the same thing is going to be done. So we move back to our master page gallery, folder structure. There we see display templates. And I'm going to take the item to lines because that's the simplest template to use. Going back here, place it here. Okay. And the item template looks very similar. So the first thing you always need to do in a display template is change the title, SPS Stockholm item. And then you have your properties again. Don't know why it always do this, but it isn't that clean. Always change it like that. So you have your property mappings in here. That's the most important line that there is in this properties. If I can. Yeah, okay. The first name is the name of your JavaScript value you want to use. So this is the name you are going to use to retrieve that value from in JavaScript. The second one is the display name that is going to be shown in the property mappings of the web part itself. I'm going to show you on my slide, so it will make it clear. And the third value is the path. And path, no, I just read path. The third value is your manage property. So you always need these things. The only thing that isn't needed is this one. That isn't a requirement. It's just to make your template a little bit cleaner and to for people to understand which value it is that they can use. So you have the same thing, same comments, same language files. We don't need that. This is some code to retrieve all these properties from. We're going to leave it blank first, and here is your markup for the item. So the first thing I'm going to do is define my own properties. So these are the properties I need. So I need a path, and the property to retrieve is the path itself. Same for title. I have a description of the page. That's a managed property called Xylos Abstract. And then I have a picture. And picture contains of 3 values here. So you can define multiple values or multiple managed properties. And it's the same as you do when you create them in search. There you can say if the first one contains data, just store that, or that it has multiple. Here you can define, I want to have a picture, and that picture may come from a publish image managed property, picture URL, or picture thumbnail URL. and it's going to process them one by one. If the published image contains data, then it's just going to use that property. If it doesn't, it's going to take the next one, and so on. The next thing to do is to retrieve these properties. And these properties can be retrieved with the getItemValue method. So there you define getItemValue, your current context you're in, and the path. That's the JavaScript name, and that's the first name here. So if this was link URL like this, then it should have been like this. You're going to see a lot of this in your display templates. It's just to create a unique ID for your item control. You don't need to do that, but then it has each item has a unique ID. I just leave it there. And what I also need is I have my picture, and my picture can be very large, very small. I need to know that it's in the correct dimensions of my web parts to be used. So I'm going to define an image rendition for it. Anyone that doesn't know what image renditions are in SharePoint 2013? Okay. So an image rendition, you're going to define which renditions for your images there are. So if you upload an image, let's go to the site. You can define your image renditions. And if you're uploading an image to your site, then you can define the dimensions for that image to be used. And as you can see, I have a Stockholm dimension, and that has a width of 848 pixels and a height of 310. So if I calling that rendition for that image, I always get it in the exact size of that rendition. So what I do is I'm retrieving the picture value, and I appending a width and a height behind it. That's the simplest way to retrieve it. So by doing that, I'm calling the picture, appending it behind, and it's going to search for, or it's going, if it isn't created in the blob catch, it's going to retrieve the image from it. And then the last thing we need is the HTML itself. And in this HTML, there are some important things. So we defined all the variables at the top. So we have path, we have title, we have description, and we have picture, rendition URL. And you need to place them somewhere in your HTML file. And to do that, you need to place it in between placeholders. And that's _pound =. If you don't do that, then the JavaScript generator doesn't know that it's a variable. So it will, all the HTML in this file will be commented in JavaScript to be placed in your layout. And all the variables will be retrieved with the exact variable. So here you can see it's done for the container ID, for the path, for the title, and so on. So now let's save our templates. Going back to our site. And now we should have an item template available. That's called SharePoint Saturday Stockholm item. SharePoint Saturday Stockholm item. going to show me the correct data. Okay. Doesn't like me today. Okay. Okay. Let's just leave it like that for a sec. So the item template. So I told you you have three values. You have your property name for JavaScript use. Then you have your property display name. And this property display name is used in the property mapping section for this. So if you want to have it line 1, so then you remove this and place line 1 in it. So it's just for giving an extra description of that property you want to use. So if picture URL isn't clear enough, then you can define your own value for it. But it isn't required, so you can just leave it out. And then the last thing is a managed property to retrieve. Retrieving your values in the item template is done via the get item value and referencing your current context, and then the property name you defined here. And using the variable, always place it in the placeholder with underscore pound equal signs around it. So what we have now in our template, if the picture was loaded, then I don't know why it isn't. I need to check that later on. You can't click on it yet because we didn't do anything to define the click actions. So it's only going to show us right now the first item it retrieves. But we said that there were 3 items. We know that there are 4, so we can update it to 4. 4. Okay. Right now we're retrieving 4 items. But we need to define these actions. And for that we need to do some event handling. So what we are going to do, doesn't matter where you do it, in the item template or in the control template, we are going to define a post-render callback action. And that post-render callback action is going to say, okay, from the moment all your HTML is loaded on the page, you can execute this code. Are there people that's using jQuery? It's very similar to the document ready function. So from the moment your document is ready, you execute your jQuery code. The same thing happens in this. From the moment your control and item templates are done rendering, you can execute this code. And in it, we're defining the cycle action. That's with a slider that's coming from this JavaScript file. So we say this control, this slides need to cycle every 5 seconds, and my next button is defined, and my previous, and so on. So if we go back, get this ugly yellow bar gone. You can cycle. Normally it was going to show us oh, I think something is wrong in my item template. Rendition. Yeah, maybe the quickest way is just to No, it doesn't want to do it right now. Sorry? Yeah, here. Yes? Yeah, I've here my... Yeah, but there, if I go to my web part itself, okay. Yeah, indeed it is. So, some hiccups. Sorry? Yeah, indeed. That's for the next thing, indeed. Normally everything was going to be okay, and then we don't need to debug, but okay. Event handling can be done with the add post render callback function, or with you also have another function which is available, and that's the current context on post render. Doesn't matter which you use. You can use both of them, whatever is your choice. Then we go coming to the debugging section. Normally it wasn't needed, but does anyone recognize this template? Anyone used it? Yeah. I think that template was the most used template for XSL. So this template, I always implemented it at each client. It was my debugging template. And it's going to show you the property name it retrieves from the items, and it's going to show you also the corresponding value to it. So in the content search web part of SharePoint 2013, it's already available out of the box. So they have seen it that we are using that template a lot of times, so they already made it available. So in your item template, you have diagnostic. If from the moment you select that, I'm going to show you on the site itself. So here you have diagnostic. And then you go to your property mappings. And out of the box, there are 3 property mappings defined. And if you check this, change property mappings, then you can define your own property mappings. So title, description, abstract, author. So I have 10 lines to do. From the moment you click OK, you save it, then you receive something like this. If I have chosen a list template, it was even better. So that's quite a neat template to use. So it's directly showing us, okay, our title as a managed property and the value from it. So you directly know which it is. Anyone that recognized this message? Can you tell me what's wrong? Me neither. So it could be that you came in on Monday and your colleague was working on XSLT templates on Friday, and the first thing you did is going to your internet, and this was on it. Yeah. It was like, okay, what's wrong? Where to begin? Okay, it will be in the XSLT of the web part, but where is the problem? So yeah, you can't debug XSLT really. So now in display templates, from the moment there is a problem, a real problem in your template, then you're getting this kind of message boxes. So it's going to show you, hey, that's a problem. And here, for example, I created an undefined, or I didn't create a variable, so you can see, hey, this variable does not exist, is undefined. So you directly know, okay, I'm using a variable that doesn't exist. If for some reason you don't get any message boxes like before in my demo and you didn't receive the image, then you can debug it with Firebug or IE developer tools, Chrome tools, and so on to debug the JavaScript. So you can do it line by line, and that's the ease of working with display template, just JavaScript, so you have your browser tools to debug it. Last part, from the moment all your display templates are finished and you're up for deploying them and provisioning them to your next environments, test, Q&A, production, you have your provisioning part. And for that you can go two ways, or you can go the JavaScript only way, or you can do the HTML provisioning way. Doesn't matter what you use. If you use HTML provision, you need to know that the HTML needs to have a trigger to get the JavaScript updated. So you need to have some code that just updates the file. You don't need to do a modification to the file, just update it and it will generate a new JavaScript file. Some people tell me, okay, I'm doing only the JavaScript file because it's read-only. That's not true. The JavaScript file isn't read-only. It's just a file on SharePoint, can be altered, but they think that because there is a process behind it that it gets generated from the HTML file, it is a read-only file. Don't know exactly why, but it isn't read-only. My preferred way is giving my clients the HTML file, and why is that? Because then I know from the moment you are going to modify the templates, they can do it in the HTML file, and it's a lot easier to do it in the HTML file than in the JavaScript file. So if you worked in 2007 and 2010, you had a lot of power users that were doing things with SharePoint Design, and if they want to do it, they are going to do it. So it doesn't matter which files you place there. If you place the JavaScript file, they are going to modify them also if they want to have something else. So as I said, it doesn't matter what you provision. It's your experience, and you can do the HTML way or the JavaScript way. So that was all. Are there some questions? Or we can do some questions behind it also. Yeah? Yeah, but I think that this has something to do with the branding I applied on it. Because that's the first phase of my branding for or intranet of my company. Yeah, but in Internet Explorer I don't have the problem. I was just doing the demo in Firefox, and there I just saw it. So it's debugging my template in a live demo. So any other question? No. JSLink is something else. Yeah. JSLink is referencing a link to a render template for your view. And a display template is only used for search. So it's something else. JSLink is also doesn't get generated from an HTML file, just an JavaScript file. So. Yeah, there are some similarities. So yeah, these things, yeah, indeed. That's in the client side render JavaScript file, so that's a global file that always gets loaded, but indeed there are some similarities in it. Other questions? Yes? Sorry? okay, you want to bundle your control templates in one template or something. I don't think that is available. If you check your search center, for example, they aren't bundling it also. They are just separated files. So that's why you need to know that it's very important to, it's client-side rendering, and if you create a lot of templates, if you're defining a lot of templates, it can be a performance issue for your client. So these display templates are really small. So if you have bigger files, then I always say move the content of your code to another file and reference it in a global JavaScript file. What about the fallback for users that don't have JavaScript available? Or, yeah, then they can't use SharePoint. Yeah. So, do you need a fallback for that? Then I need to. Yeah, it is something you need to think about, because for our intranet, everything could be done via display templates, but then we had, I think, 6 web parts on it that were generating content from a display template, and some of the things don't need to come from a display template, because you need to, you want that it has to be placed directly on the page, and display template is always going to call an AJAX call behind it to retrieve the results and to show it to you. So you have a delay. So if you're doing everything with client-side rendering, you have an empty page. And for a public website, for example, client-side rendering isn't good for your SEO. So it depends on what you want to do and want to achieve. So. iframe, I didn't hear that. Okay. So you want to create a page with your results on it to show all the. Wait. I'm already going to show you the thank you page. So yes. Mm-hmm. So you have SharePoint 2010 environment and the 2013 already. Okay. Yeah. Yeah, then you can use an iframe, but I won't go for that. They are also doing it in the app parts, so that's the only downside about apps, I find, that it's using an iframe and you don't know how the dimensions are of your results. So yes, that could be a solution, but giving it to your end users, they're always going to scroll, and then you have these over panels and they will be behind. So mm. Yeah, but you can also do, yeah, if you have a result page and you place a snippet web part on it with some CSS to remove everything and to strip everything from it, then it can be done. But I would say to turn off the hover panels in your display template then. so that you don't have, from the moment that you scroll over it, that there isn't an over panel, that the iframe isn't doing some things. So it's an interesting thing. Yeah. Yes, that's also a possibility. Yeah, but that requires some development then. Or if the application has something to show, just kind of results, then yeah. But if you're doing it the out of the box way. My last slide is a reference slide to my blog items that I used for this slide deck. So feel free to check them if needed. So thank you all.